Welcome back to another level of crypto, my God. And today we are up. Things are looking pretty healthy for old Orange Coin, probably because Orange Man is supporting Orange Coin. It's a thesis that sounds pretty sound, so I'm going to keep going with it. Now, one thing is, I've been here for 2 weeks. Anybody that's been watching my content saw me start at six-figure Bitcoin. It then went down to, $91,000, right? We lost 10% of the total cap. Now we're back to over, what is it at present? We're looking at 104, and this is amazing. But this point that I want to make, guys, this is a long-term game. Let's not get too focused on short-term gains or losses. As you can see, if we had actually tried to trade that market over the last week, probably would have been in Pain City. The best thing to do, long-term, find a thesis that you can get behind and hold on to it. Now, this channel is not investment advice. I'm not trying to tell you to buy anything. I'm just trying to educate you about the space in general. So let's dive into it. I want to talk today just about why. Why are we seeing this explosion right now? And I do think some of this is short term. Everybody's probably heard the expression, buy the rumor, sell the news. The rumor being, and the news being, the Trump presidency coming in, a change of guard, and a lot of updates to the regulatory environment. This is really bullish. We saw a pump after the Trump election. Then we saw a dump going into it saying, again, buy the rumor. Is Trump going to win? Sell the news. Trump did win. Now, what's interesting is going back into it is a refreshing look and take as more information comes out about the sort of leniency of policy that we hope to see. Another big element in, I think, today's really strong rise and really solid value accrual is that tonight, Friday night, January 17th, is the crypto ball. A lot of people in the industry will be in Washington, D.C. to meet directly with the presidency. Now, I don't know how exciting that's going to be. There are a lot of people that have access to it. It's not that private. Quite frankly, it's about a six-figure ticket to get in, and if you want to pay, you can pay to play. However, that seems to be how this administration is going to go, and in terms of business endeavors that have capital that want to begin lobbying, for better or for worse, it's going to mean good things for the industry. So guys, how did we get here? It's been crazy. I said this before in the past. I voted for Biden when he came into the presidency initially, and I have never seen such an onslaught of aggressive tactics towards an industry. This happens to be an industry that I specifically work in, so it was pretty crazy. Now, this is an interesting take on the financial surveillance of the United States and how the federal government weaponized the Bank Secrecy Act to spy on Americans. But you can imagine that this concept of using finances, of using transactions to spy, to do what is called KYC AML, know your client, anti-money laundering, that all sounds really straightforward, but that actually means that we give a lot of our data to these services, whether they be Robinhood, Coinbase, any sort of bank, anyone trying to transact with us. We provide them with way too much information, our home address, our phone number, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of times, even a social might be involved. And the problem there is that no central authority is good at defense, right? In order to attack their castle, this is what it's called, a honeypot, all you need to find is one crack in the wall. It greatly benefits people trying to steal the data, and it's much more difficult to retain that data. So all of this is really fundamentally against what crypto is about, and one of the reasons that I think you're trying to see a crushing of it. Now, how did we get here? Because that's really important to look at, right? Cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin especially, they all started with an anti-government bent. The whole idea is that we don't want central authorities controlling not only our personas, the fundamental about being a libertarian is my rights and my freedoms, but very importantly, and at the core of freedom, is money, right? That is the idea behind Bitcoin. And traditionally speaking, up until recently, it's actually been pretty agnostic. I would say there's been some aggressive moves in New York City by Ben Lawsky, who created the Bit license. This was a pretty crazy move back in the day. He essentially made it very hard for anyone building a cryptocurrency business to operate inside of New York City. And once he got that law passed, he immediately stepped down, was hired by Ripple to figure out how to get around said license. This is something that we call regulatory capture, and is something that is very eager, that anyone should be eager to avoid. We do not want people to create a wall and then to be able to make jobs and payments for themselves by helping others get over said wall. So what really got us here was things like this. We pop up and we see Elizabeth Warren is building an anti-crypto army. Like, why? Why? This is a new asset class. This is something that the millennials, that the Gen Zers are very into. This is about open finance. This is about refinement of a very expensive financial industry that is built on 100-year-old rails. It can't do anything. Most of the fintech platforms that you see are simply a nice user interface on what is a clusterfuck of a backend. They're juggling things around. They're trying to make it work. But in reality, the banking system was built on humans showing up and acting as intermediaries. This is pre-computer. None of it was under the concept that an application could run and that it could facilitate things autonomously. Now, one of the big issues with financial surveillance is that it is all built on these intermediaries. They sit within regulatory environments, they sit as oversight committees, and the problem with crypto is there are no intermediaries, right? These smart contracts facilitate all the things, and it's basic math. That's the craziest part, is that when you open up these codes, what are you looking at? You're looking at numbers, right? You're looking at equations. So this anti-crypto army is fundamentally tough to pull off because it's an anti-math army. Math at the end of the day is freedom of speech. This is all very complicated, and that's why you're starting to see some of the policymakers say, hey, we need to curtail our speech. This will also extend into ghost guns, which is going to be a very interesting concept, right? Now that 3D printers can take information, which is speech, and turn it into something real. Now, the Elizabeth Warren obsession has grown. It's accrued sort of energy, and it really took over the Biden administration. I would call it a cancerous thing coming from the inside out. It's important to note that Biden actually lost many of his states by the lesser number than crypto users or wallet holders in said states. So by pushing these people away, it easily cost the Democrats their victory. So over the course of 2024, we can start to see that resistance is beginning to build, right? Now that there's a face of the enemy, and there are some wild interviews of her in Congress, especially with the CEO of Chainalysis, which is an analysis firm that I would say is mostly helping out the government. And she blatantly refuses to accept his answers. It's pretty wild. So it was clear where the bias leaned. And by positioning herself and the Biden admin as just being overly aggressive, as completely adversarial, it gave rise to the industry inside to begin creating PACs. And what's wild is that we've seen this sort of transition. Again, crypto's people used to be libertarian, very much in their own, not even middle ground, but their own subground, and now they're moving more towards the republicanism. So all of that leads us to all of the enforcement action. So under this anti-crypto army that falls in with the regulators, right? The SEC became completely heavy-handed in this. And in my experience operating inside the crypto industry, especially running businesses, we saw it on a nearly day-to-day basis. I would wake up and somebody would be having a lawsuit against them, whether they be a trading platform, obviously tons of Binance, and it just keeps going, right? You have Coinbase, which is trying to establish itself as a major enterprise in the United States, publicly traded. Like, why are you trying to take this down? There's very funny things that you wake up and you say, UkiDAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization. We could really just think of that as a club. It's not all of that autonomous in any way at this point in time. But UkiDAO was just kind of, I hadn't even heard of them until they realized that they could get them because there were operators inside of an organization. And they're trying to expand the laws. And the points of some of these regulatory assaults is to say, hey, you're a member in this DAO. You're like on their Discord making comments. That makes you financially liable for any criminal acts that happened and yada, yada, yada. So they're really looking and using this to extend the range of their regulatory capabilities. Now, all of this comes down to the core of Gary Gensler saying, come in and register. I worked at a place that issued assets through the regulatory compliant avenues. It's called Reg CF, crowdfunding, which means it's exempt from registering if you do it through the rules that they've predetermined. We sold 3 project tokens through Reg CF back in the day, and the lawyers from the SEC and the government in general shut them all down just due to lawsuits that dragged out and destroyed their runway capital. So they were just attacking people. These are all pretty passive, chill projects too. They were just kind of adorable. Now, Tornado Cash, I'm going to touch on later, but you can just see Blender.io, Bittrex. Like, man, they just kept the list going, attacking everyone that they could. And of course here, a really big one was Ripple Labs, and that attack was important because Ripple had raised enough money to fight back, and they're a big part of it. Now, you know, what really broke my heart and kind of was a big douse of cold water was this adorable project called Pool Together. Now, Pool Together was a simple concept. Ethereum, you can stake it, it earns yield. Pool Together just made a nice little app, which was a lottery system. And it basically said, we're going to take everyone's Ethereum, and all of that yield is going to go into a pot. So you give it up, right? For a small amount of ETH, you give up your tiny yield. But there's a chance that one of the people in the lottery gets to win the whole pot. Really cute idea, obviously something fun that can be built on blockchain tech. They got destroyed. So they came out with these NFTs. I purchased one that said Protect Pooley. But at the end of the day, when you're going against the SEC and the regulators, it's just too expensive. And like Pool Together, there was LBRY, which was a technological platform that's trying to use the openness of blockchain to say, hey, can we make information available to more people? Can we make it accessible, right? This sounds very virtuous, very altruistic. But they were assaulted by the US SEC. And we can see here that LBRY CEO Jeremy Kauffman said the decision threatens the entire U.S. cryptocurrency industry by setting a standard that would deem almost every cryptocurrency as a security. Now you can see what they're doing here is they were actually targeting very small companies to establish these precedents to say that all crypto assets are a security. This is something you probably heard back and forth. The SEC loved to say that. They never liked to define what would cause that. And they've actually been using this gray area to just continue this campaign of assault. So that's why we've seen a really repressed or even depressed cryptocurrency industry under the Biden admin. And that is just a truly insane thing to have witnessed and to have gone through, being inside the industry, being so optimistic and so positive about what it can do for not only society, but the US in particular. And as you saw in my stablecoins as the hammer for the United States, I do think aside track and a side story is stablecoins are the best bet for the United States to maintain its dollar dominance. So this is all very, very strange to assault it and to kill it when I look at it as something that can support us, that can take us into dominance and leadership in the next era of whatever the globe turns into. Now, another one that's very close to my heart is coming from the DOJ around mixing and saying that basically if you take these transactions and you put a bunch of them together, it kind of obscures what the cash is doing. They're saying that it's for money laundering, all of these terrible things. Now, the developers, and one of them is a friend of mine, is Roman Storm. He is now on trial against the Department of Justice saying that, hey, we launched this code. It was just code. We pushed it to the internet. Sure, the code has an effect, but again, that's the same as writing math and just like sticking it on a wall somewhere. Now, here it says that the Tornado Cash smashed their keys, meaning that they are not in control. They do not have access to the funds. What's going on now is a very big debate and in trial to say, do you actually have control? What is the level? They're trying to set precedents again about how operating that code, what touch points constitute decentralization versus not. There's actually a really great interview with Roman here on the Bankless podcast that goes much more into depth about what he's facing. It's very important to the industry, maybe one of the most important cases, because it reflects the gravity of a situation for a developer launching an application. Again, they're putting out code. They're not necessarily receiving any rewards, but just being involved to that degree, what is it going to mean? Is it going to mean imprisonment? These are very serious things to deal with. So Roman is currently going up basically on his own. His campaign is not super well funded, so let me put a funding link in the bottom of our description today. But this is just another step forward. Now, all of this is to say the reason for the depressed market over 2024 was that all we saw was onslaught every day, day in, day out. They abused us. They beat us down. They said, we're going to kill this industry. We have an anti-crypto army. This was the perfect setup for the opposition, Mr. Donald Trump, who loves money and loves to kind of have a tit for tat, quid pro quo relationship with people, to step in and say, hey, they hate you so much, I'll support you. They want to destroy you, I'll uplift you. And that's what's happening. That little message started to resonate more, gave a feedback loop that he loved. If anyone saw the Trump Bitcoin Nashville, you could see on his face the excitement when he got reactions that were far better than he thought. He began to reinforce messages that, oh, if I say this, I will get that applause that I so greatly desire. So now we're in this position where the Democrats, through their opposition, have just emboldened Trump to say these things, to make these actions. And that in and of itself got him support. It got him funding. It took all of the major money players inside of crypto to rally behind him because they're all looking at their businesses and saying, well, these other people want me dead. This person wants to support me. It's an obvious choice. And that was a huge boon, I think, to his victory. We're looking at, the majority of millennial millionaires are positioned in this asset class. There's over 5 million crypto holders in the United States. I think if you were to ask me, I can't see anyone under the age of 18 now really opening a bank account before they have a crypto wallet. You could open a crypto wallet at like 12 years old. It's very easy. Start going. To go into a bank, I mean, it's quiet, it smells, it's weird. The tellers don't even give you good service. Like, it is a dead technology walking, and it's just so strange to look at it and not realize how much the digital future is going to become overwhelmingly successful. So this is a big bolster, and the reason why we're seeing the crypto markets explode today is that Trump is about to take office on Monday, and tonight is a special night because there is a crypto ball. The inaugural gala signals for a new dawn of U.S. crypto leadership. So Trump has come out and said on Monday, on his first day, that he's going to overhaul a lot of the rules, throw out a lot of the regulatory enforcement actions. Hopefully Roman gets a little bit of a boost there, as well as just basically turning over the SEC and saying it's a new leaf, it's a new leadership, and we're doing things differently. So YOLO, baby. I've been personally talking to a lot of the companies I work with and trying to commission or convince them that the position should not be to be afraid of the US. So at present, one of the impacts of the previous regime and the SEC was that the US citizens have not been able to get rewarded in the form of, say, airdrops. Airdrops are free money for using a product. Free money that they give you. It's a bootstrapping mechanism. And everyone's so afraid of the US blowback from the SEC that they geofence us. All of these DeFi protocols that are amazing for accruing value, for putting your capital to work, they all block US citizens. Why? Because they're just afraid of this opaque nature and assault that comes from them. So now we're going to see a risk on play. A lot of people are not only going to lean into the US and maybe remove some of those barriers, but they're probably going to support and endorse the United States. There's even, Trump has gone so far as to say that there might be tax exemptions for the people that have launched companies from the US. Now, how wild is that, right? The few that said fuck it and that did it anyway, and that maintained through that aggressive policy or supported lawsuits, right, against the SEC, they will now reap the benefits. And it's a truly wild experience. And I think they deserve it, even though a lot of the tech is kind of dead and stupid. But, you know, we're moving on to a new world, so it's going to be really interesting to see how the market reacts on Monday. I'm sure we will see some accrual and pumping, but it will also begin to embed this realization in some. So I imagine we'll have some pullback before, again, a healthy floor is made and actual real regulations start to roll out, which then provide our pathway for a healthy ascent. All that is being said, the next 4 years look really good for the cryptocurrency industry. So do with that what you will. I think, as always, if you do want to invest any capital, and this is not truly investment advice in one direction or another, it's just think long term. Don't do short term. You will get stuck. You will get tripped up. These are assets with some real value. So if you're chasing meme coins, the AI coins that I discussed the other day, that might be tough. Those things are of the moment. They're the flashy, shiny object. But things like Bitcoin, which have been around for 15 years now, they have a real effect. They're starting to catch on and gain adoption. So 4 years should be an interesting time. And I look forward to streaming it with you all. Good luck out there, guys.